Good morning, Jam Talkers. Happy Sabbath. It's another day. Of course, we're on the grind, trying to play our part in the contribution to the upliftment of our country. Because, of course, we all will agree and accept that that has to be a collective effort. A little tired. I was at a fundraiser last night for a young lady whose boyfriend killed her some weeks ago. Apparently, he heard that she was being unfaithful, and his response was to snuck out her life, leaving a young child. She was young herself, 21 years old. And of course, we are all aware of that incident downtown yesterday where I think it's a security guard killed a woman, apparently his lover, for the same, reason, jealousy and men thinking that women are their personal possession. And it's really a sad way to start my show, but we have become such a barbaric society. We just cannot continue like this. We just can't continue to be killing our youths, our elderly, our children, our young women. We cannot continue on this path. And there's so many different, factors that have been contributing to this rise in crime and just violence and aggression and hatred, and everybody is just angry. The whole world is at war, apparently. It's not just in Jamaica, as we would have seen, almost every day in one of these countries, in France, in Italy, in America. We have these mass killing, no respect for human life anymore. We are a world that have really a high appetite for blood and for death and for killing. And I don't know. These are really the last of the last days. That's all I can say. And it is quite frightening. It's really, really a very frightening time for a lot of us, wherever we are, in the world, because in respective countries, each of us have to come face to face with our own reality of what is happening in our country. But I don't know, it's just really a scary time, really, really scary time that we're living in. But as always, it's a pleasure being here. My apology for not being able to do a show last week. I hope that you were entertained by, I know, Loyal or maybe Kenisha would have put forward a program that would have entertained and educate you and, keep you informed. Even if I couldn't have gotten the opportunity to be live last week, because it's really, really a challenge sometimes to do your script and you on the ball every day, pulling long hours. It can be a lot challenging, because I came home, I think minutes 2 or after 2 last night from this fundraiser for this young lady in White House, and came to sleep, woke up and tried to put my script together for a show. But I will always be eager to stretch and challenge myself for a good cause. And I think that what we're doing here and Jam Talk Radio Network is really a good cause in its own way. So, a little tired, but I'm here. So please, bear with me while we get through today's show. As I just mentioned, we're living in some really, really interesting times, and the level of crime and violence being experienced locally and worldwide is really quite frightening and give rise to cause for concern wherever we are. And even right here in Montego Bay, which has always been classified as the tourist mecca of Jamaica, we have our own reality of being at a place where crime and violence and lawlessness, total lawlessness and killings just have become totally uncontrollable and almost unbearable. That, the authorities that be are looking at the many different options and different strategies that they can utilize to see how they can bring this monster that have risen up in Montego Bay over the past months, coming into weeks, to see how they can basically bring it under some form of control. We have reached a stage in Jamaica where nobody fears the law anymore. It's now the other way around, where the law fears the criminal, and of course the law have to accept some responsibility for that. And just the whole country, the respective governments, policymakers, we have to collectively accept responsibility for where we are today as it relates to our crime fighting strategy and our basically the results that we're producing in our war on crime, because it's obvious that we're not winning and the criminals are more organized, they're more strategic. I don't know if they're better funded, but they're definitely more organized. And the JCF have really found itself in what I'd call between a rock and a hard place, and just the general policymakers and government have really found itself in a very peculiar place right now as it relates to its crime fighting management and strategies. Week before last, I could have really sworn that Jamaica was at war with another country based on the number of armored vehicles and soldiers that I saw passing through the city of Montego Bay. And I'm being totally honest here. What I saw made me feel like I wasn't in Jamaica, but in one of those war-prone countries, or literally in a war zone. And then this truck passed by with the young men who apparently are who the soldiers picked up and taking them to be processed. And when I saw the faces of some of those men in the back of the vehicle, some looked as young as 18 or even younger. And I remember this particular one, when I saw the fear on his face and this innocence, this youthful innocence on his face, my heart for an instant wept, because of course he didn't fit the profile of a criminal. He looked like a fearful, innocent, a little young guy who, I don't know, got caught in the web of crime, probably because of circumstances, or who knows, maybe he just have that look, but could be one of the most brutal and ruthless killer. I don't know. I just looked at his face and for a moment I felt pity, and I felt sad that so many of our young men, because every time that you drive by and you see these trucks passing by, whatever, those carrying out the operations, or JCF or the military, it's always our young black men, young youths, 16, 17, 18, sometimes maybe even younger. And I have to really ask myself, is the rise in crime really, have we failed our people? Have we failed our youths? Have we failed our children? Have we failed our women? That they've gotten caught in a cycle and get trapped in a cycle that They had children that they couldn't educate, they couldn't have gone at the right skill set for them to be productive agents of society. Where have we gone wrong when we have a society that we have so many of our young men and women turn into a life of crime as young as even 12, 10? We have to come to grasp that we have failed collectively. The system have failed our youths, our children, our women, and our people in general. When you see these young men from a humanitarian perspective, in an instant you're going to feel pity for them. You're going to want to help. You're going to want to find out why you're so young. Why are you here? Why are you in this kind of a lifestyle? Why didn't you choose another path? Because they all have a story, one way or another. Each and every single one of them have a story. And of course, after that pity comes, then you go back to the reality that, it's quite possible that many of these young men, though they may look young and innocent, that they could have snuck out the life of a lot of innocent people. But I know when I looked in the back of that truck, the profile of the men were all the same. Young black men who obviously are from a poor family background. Not one of them looked close to a professional person or from an upscale community. They were all of dark skin. The only ones who looked a little light skin were chemically altered. I don't have to say more on that. And then, it occurred to me that yes, these young men could have possibly turned to a life of crime because of their socioeconomic condition. They never had the opportunity that some other persons had, and their only option, to live is really what they're doing. And it cannot be, that is no option. And, that choice should never be in the mix of decisions that a young man is faced or a young woman is faced to make. I continue to ask, what did we honestly think would have become of our country, where we have so many uneducated, unskilled, unattached youths roaming around in our society. They have basic human needs of food, clothing, shelter. How did we think they would have been trying to survive if they were not able to participate, or if they're not able to participate in the formal society but left unmonitored in an informal structure environment? At some point in time, we collectively would have known what the end result would have been. We would have known that the probability would have been very, very high that they would have turned to a life of crime if the authorities that didn't intervene and put in any remedial actions, didn't come in with any kind of social program that would have effectively intervened from an early stage, if we didn't catch them at an early stage and basically work with them through the different agencies that exist to address these kind of situation, to show them, to give them an alternative at that early stage of their displacement. So we sit and we waited until they become full-bred criminals. Criminality of all different types, including murders. And then we call in the army to heap them up like animals and carry them to the lockup to be processed and to be sent to be given a life sentence if found guilty. Is this really the solution that we will continuously have to treat with the children of poor people from poor communities, vulnerable people who don't have a lot of options at their disposal, who have been trapped in a cycle by one reason or another. They didn't get a chance to be something else, to get a skill, to get educated, to be accepted in the formal society. Because I always say, for some of these young men to do what they do, especially those that are involved in scamming, they're naturally brilliant, they're naturally smart, but they don't have the formal qualification or skill set that is required for them to transition into a formal workplace and environment. So do we just leave them and turn a blind eye until they start to turn up the thing on society as they are doing now? Because that's what we have done. Because I tell you, they didn't just turn criminals overnight. It's a process. It is a process, and many of us have seen them going through the transition before they start to turn up the thing on society. And many persons saw the process and exploited the process for their own enrichment and empowerment, and use and abuse them to do the dirty work. And then we when we are now living in fear and feel like Jamaica has become a war zone, then everybody have everything to say, all the good things to say, and everybody has an idea of what to do, when many of who are speaking now are main players in the contributing factors of why some of these youths have turned to a life of crime. The hypocrisy of the society that we live in, and how it is so easy to use and abuse and exploit the poor and vulnerable, in our society. And the same people who, are very integral in aiding and abetting and transitioning these guys into a life of crime, those are the ones who now have the noble things to say as to what do we do to control crime. As I say, the hypocrisy of the society, not just in Jamaica. It's not unique. This is not unique to Jamaica. It's a global thing. But I have to continue to say, if this is a solution that we have to treat with these unattached, detached, disassociated, displaced youths who are now living a life of crime, then I'll tell you that we immediately have an urgent need for a large build-out of prisons. We're going to need more prisons than we need housing solution in Jamaica, because the present ones that we have will not be able to hold a large amount of our youths that are destined for prison, just because they are trapped in a cycle and they're not an alternative to transition them from where they are now to something else, to be a law-abiding citizen who are contributing to society in another way, in a more positive way, and not be praised on society, snucking out the life of women and children and our elderly, and basically really putting a dent in our budget, because it does take a huge part of our budget that could have been used for more growth and development incentive and strategies. A huge chunk of that will have to be invested in fighting crimes and hunting down youths that have turned to a life of crime. And when we find them and catch them and they're found guilty and we lock them up, it takes a lot of taxpayers' money to feed them and to put in the different rehabilitative measures because the prison system is really can only be effective if it rehabilitates our persons who have come afoul of the law, who have committed a crime, to just send them to prison to become bigger criminals and to be bitter and more aggressive and to have more hate and anger. It's really not the solution of our prison system, and it does cost a lot of taxpayers' money. So anyway you take it, it's a lose-lose situation for society. It takes a lot in the strategies to catch them, and when they do get caught, it takes a lot to keep them in prison. So we definitely have to start investing more in preventative measures. That's where the solution lies. And don't get me wrong, if you commit a crime, you must pay the price and do the time. But we just can't ignore the obvious in our present situation, that society has failed these youths tremendously, and the authorities that we must take responsibility for the use, the abuse, and the exploitation of the poor and vulnerable in this country. I always say this, I always say it, that when you look in the prisons and in the lockups, it's mostly poor people picnic, black people, poor people picnic. You see in there, you don't see the youths from Cherry Gardens and Beverly Hills and Jack Sills and Iron Shores, and you don't see the Mr. Chins and the Issas and the Matalans and those type of people. You see the unknown. You see the people from the garrisons. You see the poor, the children of the poor and vulnerable. So that suggests that the socio-economic situation of these people, those that fall on the lower social strata of society, and I always say, though there's not a documented direct correlation between poverty and crime, we cannot ignore the obvious. The obvious is there. Go into prisons, look in the back of the trucks when the police pick up, or the soldiers pick up the men, who they are, what they look like, the profile. And if that doesn't suggest that there is a strong link between poverty and crime, I don't know what else will. And we cannot continue to ignore the obvious. I'm not saying because you're poor you will turn to crime, and you must, there's a direct link between poverty and crime, because there are many, 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 many persons who have grown up in, abstract poverty, and they have made the best of that situation to become the best and the best of society right now. The lawyers, the doctors, the judges, the politicians. We have choice, but there is also that reality that persons at the lowest strata of society don't have a lot of options, and it takes an enormous amount of discipline, morals, values, a big belief in doing the right thing no matter what your situation is, for you to come out of those kind of environment and make something of yourself and keep, at the end of your journey, your hands are still clean, and you went about your transition from poverty into prosperity the right and proper way, and you didn't basically pervert the system or deviate from your beliefs in what is right morally and otherwise. But it's a challenge. It is not easy. And if you should talk to any of these persons now who have elevated themselves from poverty into a life of prosperity, and you hear their story, it the journey was not easy, but many of us around, many of the people around us don't have that inner strength and that inner discipline to remain focused on your transition while continuing to do the right thing, to stay on the right path and to get to the end of your journey, with your character and your integrity still intact. It is really a challenge. It's not easy. And as I said, always say, we are being really, really hypocritical if we don't accept that the probability increases exponentially for poor people to commit crime. And though there's no direct correlation, there will always be a very strong connection between poverty and crimes, whether we want to believe it or not. Poverty is the reason why people's lives don't matter. One of the main reasons why people's lives don't matter much anymore. Some too poor to think that they have anything to live for, and too poor to even give a rat's about somebody else's life. Their focus is surviving for the moment by whatever means necessary. Poverty have really erased and or reduced the moral compass of many of our youths and people in general in society. And they are caught between making a morally right decision of choosing to uphold the right in respect for life and that of satisfying one of their basic human needs, such as food and shelter, and to care for their children and loved ones. For many of us, this is a very easy choice to make. We know we don't kill, we don't steal, we don't maim, we don't rape, we don't take things that are not ours. It doesn't matter what our situation is. For many of us, it's a very, very clear choice to make. There's not even a choice, there's only one choice. We know we don't do the wrong thing to correct a situation. It doesn't matter what our situation is. But for many, the choice is clear for them also. A man have to eat by whatever means necessary. So they will do whatever it takes because their moral compass have basically been erased and they're just going through the moment. And have had conversations with some of these youths and have had conversation where they will tell you, well, mommy, I'm not living up, Nina. I'm just going through the day. If I get through the day, well, fine. They have already come to a full acceptance of what their destiny is as young as they are, some in their early 20s, and they have accepted that their lifespan can be cut short any moment, and they are at peace with that. That is very frightening. They are at peace in knowing that any day now is my day, and I'm cool with that. I am prepared mentally because this is what my reality is. I don't see another option, and I don't see any other choice other than what I am in right now, and I'm mentally prepared for the consequences. So these are the types of youths that the military, who have now come in to help the JCF, have to deal with. People who don't even care about their own lives and are ready to die. But until you get them, you're going to take as many as they can for one reason or another. And that is the reality of the new dimension of criminals that we have amongst us today. It is frightening. It is very frightening. Another factor is that the struggle, because as I mentioned before, when you look in the prisons, if you see the brown man picnic and they're educated, and the man from uptown or Middletown in the prison. If you see any of those, you're few and far apart. And I will tell you that the struggle of the black race is one in which we have all contributed to because of our greed and selfishness, and we have to accept that. And people say, boy, Andrew, it's not unique. Greed and selfishness is not unique just to us. It's just a people thing. It's just a natural flaw of human beings. And that is true. It's not unique to just us. But I am black, so I'm focusing on who we are, because we can only find a solution when we have come face to face with what our problems are and what are the contributing factors that have been giving us the negative results. And, that have led to what our reality is as black people today, home and abroad, globally. And the reality is that we have never been a race that each one pulls another. We have never been the race that each one tries to get to the finish line together. We have been that race where one tend to try to destroy the other, and individually we think only me, myself, and I should get to the finish line. We're not a race who thinks collectively as it relates to the empowerment of the race overall. We tend to be very individualistic in our acquisition for wealth and power, and most times we exploit each other for personal gains and personal interest. Yes, it's not unique to us, but that is really our reality also as a race, and I think it's more pronounced amongst our race, because I see the Chinese, they're equally exploitive, I don't doubt, but their race collectively have become a superpower to be reckoned with. I see the Indians as a people, they are equally, I guess, exploitive, but collectively as a people, they have becoming really a strong force to be reckoned with on the global market. The whites have always considered themselves to be the ultimate race, but for some reason, my black race, I don't see that thrust of us collectively becoming a race to be reckoned with on the world stage economically. And it is something that we need to look into as a people, to know that it's not about what I want for myself only. It's about, we need to think of what is good for us as a people and try to do it together as a people. Be tribal together as a people. Pull together as a people. Fight together as a people for one cause, what benefits us as a people. Because when we try to get to the finish line alone, what that does is that just a few of us gets ahead, while leaving the mass behind, who for their survival are left with little choice but to commit crimes for their survival. And you know who those prime candidates or praise for their criminal activities will be? The few of you who think that you should only be at the finish line by yourself. You will set yourself up to be prime candidate and target. But if we take a different approach, where as I move forward, I continue to pull somebody, and as I pull that person continues to pull, and each one pull one, and each one pull one, as one get through, you just continue to pull another brother or sister ahead with you. That reduces the opportunity for you to become a victim or a target of criminality. And I always say that I lived in an apartment complex, one studio apartment, had a family down there, over 6 persons living in, could be 6 to 8 persons, including animals, dogs and babies, and women and men. And the Indians, they do it too. When they just come, they pull together and they live together, and as one venture out and start to make some money, and they come down here and they get successful, and they send for other persons to come, and as they get themselves set up and they make some money, and they send for other families to come down, and they keep growing and they keep growing and they keep growing. And I always say, why is it that we don't do that as black people? One little studio apartment, and as they come and they set up their wholesale and whatever other business that they come to get involved with, and they start to take our money, because we will prefer go look through that wire, those mesh thing in the, and holler, Mr. Chin, sell me one this and 2 pound of rice and whatever. And your black person little shop will be right beside Mr. Chin. And you're not going in there. You're going to Mr. Chin. And as such, we have seen where a lot of our black wholesales and small black businesses have been wiped out by Chinese and Indian immigrants, because we don't support our own. We prefer to go in Mr. Chin shop and buy the rat piss pan, and them have puss and dog and rat and roach and everything running up and down, stockpiled around there in that little jam-up place. And we're going to go in there and we're supporting Mr. Chin. And what Mr. Chin does with his money is to finance his people, more of his people, to come into Jamaica, to set up businesses here, to basically take more out of our production opportunity for our people. So right now we're not left with a lot of options other than to go into Mr. Chin wholesale, and we don't see how we have contributed to that as a people, because as a people we don't support our own, and we'll go in there, and when we used to support, we can't go on Mr. Chin place, go trust, because Mr. Chin don't know you and him not trusting you, and you go and you trust out everything out of your black man place, and when him ask you for your money before you pay him, you set up gunman to go kill him and burn down him place. This is who we are as a people. And why are we surprised that even I can speak about Jamaica because this is where I live. Never left this country. This is my reality. And I don't want to leave this country. And we have to start looking deeper into the different factors over the years that have brought us to where we are now, where we are plagued with a monster, an uncontrollable monster called crime that we cannot control. And we are pulling out over here, and we are confused and in chaos as to what to do, because the criminals them turn up the thing pan way. And where do we go? We are left pondering now. Where do we go from here to really, really find a workable, sustainable solution to this crime, this war and crime that are really, really staring us in the face. We have to try and look at the many different ways that have contributed to why we are where we are. We have to start operating as a unit, as one race with one dream for what we want for our race and for our people. We have to start redefining the adjectives that have been used to describe us as a people and as a race over the years. And other than using the status of being classified as a minority race or trying to exploit affirmative actions to get the opportunity that we deserve as a race and as a people, we need to start strategically spending more time empowering our race so that we can demand and command the respect we deserve. We are a strong people. We are a brave people. We are a powerful race. We have the numbers to equally exploit and conquer the world as others have been doing. And we are the best at what we do, whether what we do adds positively or negatively on our society. When we're doing the bad, trust me, we're best at the bad. And when we're doing the good, we are best at being good. Let us choose being best at being good. Why aren't we focusing on being a race that wants the best for all and see it as a collective responsibility and obligation to pull our brothers and sisters together? Because if we don't pull each other together, some of us are going to be left to be criminals, and some of us are going to be the praise for these criminals. It is plain and simple. It doesn't get any simpler than that, whether you want to accept it or not. If we don't pull together as a people, if we continue to shut out one part of society and think that it's all about us, what that is going to result in, plain and simple, ABC 1, 2, 3. Some of us will turn to crime, and some of us will be the prey for these criminals. That is the reality, and that is what we need to, when we are making these decisions to fight crime, that is what we need to have at the forefront of our minds. And none of us are immune to being a victim. None of us. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It's just that the probability is probably a little low that you could be a target because you can protect yourself and you can afford to put in whatever systems in place to minimize you being a target over somebody who doesn't have the affordability. I've been saying a lot, and a lot of persons listening would probably think that I'm directly tying being poor to crime. I am not saying that being poor is the reason behind all crimes being committed, but many will agree that it does contribute directly or indirectly. When you're poor, you're not left with many options. When you're poor, not many poor people have the resilience and the discipline and the moral and to remain constantly guided by that moral compass. No matter what, I'm staying my course. I'm not deviating, no matter what. Worms to be tying up, the tubes in my belly. It doesn't matter what. I go drink some water and I go sleep, so I don't have food today. I might get food tomorrow. Not many persons are going to make that call. If they see the opportunity to feed themselves, they're going to take it, even if that means committing a crime. That is the reality. I am not saying being poor is the only reason behind crime. And I'm not saying we're not supposed to hold criminals responsible for their crimes. I am saying let us start looking more closely at ways to prevent so many of our young men and women. Let us look at putting in strategy to keep them away from a life of crime, to channel their energy in a more productive way that will help to create wealth for themselves and family, and also for the wider society. That is what I'm saying. And I've always been a unique young girl, and I don't profess to be smarter than anybody else. I'm always very humble, but from a very, very tender age, I've always known that the best prevention is cure. The best prevention is to cure the situation from the prevention is the best cure. Prevent the situation before having to remedy it. To prevent the situation before having to come up with a cure. It is less costly. It leaves less long permanent damage and scars. So the money that we would spend now to train and educate the youth to get them gainful employment are the monies that we have to be spending now to try to go catch them and lock them up and feed them when they're in lockup. The better way, I think, would have been to spend that money to assist poor and vulnerable families, to educate their children, to provide a training, to create jobs, rather than spending billions in your budget every year to go hunt down the youths when they commit a crime. That money would have been better spent to educate our nation, to provide job creation, to provide necessary skill set. Because yes, Heart is there, 4-H Club is there are programs and policies on the books, and some of these guys and young ladies, they get into the system and they get a skill, and then they can't find a startup capital, and they can't find gainful employment elsewhere. So anywhere you turn Makajuki, so to speak, and as I'm on this right now, as it relates to investing in educating our nation's kids, I will put this out there. People, you know yourselves, stop playing politics with our children's education. The JLP has put forward a no auxiliary fee policy, and it really, really annoys me to the highest level, to the core of my being, that we would have so many persons really, really coming up with every means necessary, every tactic in the book to fight such a policy, to throw it out, to confuse the process. Why would anybody fight a policy that is going to enable more of our people to send their children to school? Playing politics with the lives and the education of people. And it's amazing that I don't hear some of the parents themselves, because of their political allegiance, are bashing and supporting some of these schools that are making it difficult for this no auxiliary fee policy to take effect. You're in the system hustling parents, hustling the system, creating frustration for an easy implementation of this policy, coming up with all, if you haven't, some of you haven't even done a good budget for your school year yet, but you're throwing it out there that it can't work and you don't have money and you don't this and you don't do that. The schools, the teachers are paid by the government. The improvement of infrastructure and provision of infrastructure for your school is the government's expenses. Your auxiliary fees is to probably do minimal upkeep and provide additional training or any additional expense administrative, to underwrite any additional administrative expense, and you collect millions in a respective school year, and some of you have not even put forward your year's budget, but you're beating down the Minister of Education about the implementation of a great policy that will enable more people to send their children to school without being burdened. Why are we fighting for years? Why have we made it so difficult to educate our people? Why are we fearful that if we educate our people, it will definitely be harder for us to con them and exploit them and use and abuse them and use them as pawns and guinea pigs in our political game for power and personal wealth creation for our families and ourselves. It's amazing. And I'm watching and I'm waiting to see if some of these parents are going to allow the color that they prefer and where they put their eggs when an election is called. If they're going to, because Portia seems to not coming to pay your picnic school fee for you. Your MP not personally paying. He may have a CDF fund and he will assist you out of his fund. But the personal responsibility of educating your child is yours. And if you have a government in place that is making it easy for you, and you are not prepared to stand up and defend this policy and speak in defense of this minister and to have this implemented, knowing that it is going to help your child and someone who have more picnic than who can afford to feed and educate. And I'm watching to see if you're going to allow politics to really derail this program. I'm watching to see if voting PNP means more to you than educating your children. And as I said, some of you have more children that you can afford in the first place, and you need all the help you can get. So I'm really, really watching to see if you're going to play politics with some of you have been playing politics with your children's lives all your life. And then we wonder why we're at a stage now where so many of our youths have turned to crime, and the parents don't even see that have contributed to my son becoming a criminal and being placed on the police most wanted list. They're oblivious to that. They don't even care. I'm watching to see if the parents are not going to come out and speak up in defense of Minister Ruel Reid with this in getting an easy implementation into the coming school year of this no auxiliary fee program. It's your child. To educate your children is your responsibility. Let me see you go out there and stand up and defend anything that will benefit your children's education, because that's the only way we're going to put a serious dent in this rise in crime in our country today. All right. I know that respective governments have made attempts to incorporate the youths in their plans and budget. Right, so I'm not playing. I try to be, when I do this show, everybody know, which party I support and who I am. But when I do these shows, It's not about one side or the other. It's about finding solution for everybody, because if we don't collectively get to the finish line, doesn't matter what color you wear, crime is something that affects us all. None of us is immune. When you walk on the street as a young woman and should you get raped, your rapist most time would ask you if you're JLP or PNP. When you get robbed, they don't ask you which party you support. When you get caught at the wrong place at the wrong time, and your children gets killed, your children get killed, as we have seen happen many times. The gunman never asks which party your child or your children, the parents voted for. We cannot politicize crime. We need to remove the color from our eyes when we look at crime. It's not a JLP thing, it's not a PNP thing. It concerns all of us. And any politician or government or any individual that plays politics with crime, trust me, I don't want to repeat what my thoughts are that should happen to you on this public program. Right, so I know that respective governments have made attempts to incorporate the youths in their plans and budget. And one that I can speak to right now is Project Hope, one of the programs that the JLP has just put forward in their prosperity mission. And the acronym for HOPE, it stands for Housing, Opportunity, Prosperity and Employment. And under this project, the objective is really to alleviate poverty and to improve our nation's standard of living by giving production incentive, as I had mentioned before. Yes, some of our people have gone into the different training programs and they have acquired their skills, but they don't have a startup capital. Nobody's coming out here and say, here is 100,000, here is a 200,000. Go and start up your little business. You are now trained to do this. You don't have the money. So you come out of these training programs and they're right back at square one. I mean, I'm not even talking about training program. There are so many educated people, some educated up to a master's degree, and they still cannot hold on a decent job because we have not been too focused on creating job opportunities for our nation kids. We have every year we have hundreds of people graduating from our universities, highly qualified. I am one of those persons, and it's hard to hold on a decent job after you've invested and sacrificed a lot to educate yourself. So consider somebody who just go to a little training program, how hard it is for him to transition from that training program into the value-added aspect of what he went and got trained for. It is hard. So Hope has come online to provide production incentives, small business loans, public assistance grants, help with housing solution, putting in necessary public infrastructure, and naturally, to create employment for people and our youths. So really looking forward for big things to happen over the years with if, because a lot of times we put things on the books and we just put it out there because it sounds good and it looks good and we talk about it and we sell it like the best thing since sliced bread. And when you look for the results, you see nothing changes. So I'm really watching this one to see if it will just be another fancy name thing and it have more teeth than it bites. I'm hoping that this won't be one of those programs because many are on the books, and when you look around you see our youths, a mass of them, still displaced, still don't know where to go, what to do, frustrated, and many don't want to be in crime. Many want another option. I know that for a fact. They've come to me asking for jobs. Many. Miss Andrea, no farm work card now run yet, no projects now run yet. I really want something to do. They need something to do. But the capacity is not there. Nothing is there for them to do. So they're going to turn to doing what they can find to do, and most times those are not the things that would want them to be doing. But it's not that they don't want another options. I know that for a fact because I've been having these conversations with many of these youths. They want something. They want a little construction work, anything. A lot of them want something to do. We cannot continue to fight crime the way we have been doing over the years, where our main focus in our crime fighting strategies is really to go out there and catch the criminals, and after the crimes have been committed, that is. Equally over the years, the criminals have become way more smart, I'll tell you that, way more organized, far more strategic in their criminality, and they have made it very difficult for the lawmakers to apprehend them. Equally, the resources needed for this reactive approach to fighting crime have depleted, have reduced. It has become equally more expensive to fund crime fighting strategies, which naturally make it more challenging to go out and catch these criminals after they've committed a crime. In hindsight, I think if we were focusing and putting in more preventative measures, we would have been having far better results in managing this monster that exists today. Crime is most times a socioeconomic issue and must be addressed accordingly. Too long we have ignored the plight of our poor people. Too long politicians have placed guns and ammunition in the hands of vulnerable people who don't have a moral compass of right and wrong. Too long we have left our people uneducated and unskilled, and even when they get a little education and skills, there's nothing for them to do. Too long we have segregated and isolated ourselves from the poor and vulnerable because of their address, where they live, where they come from, the language they speak. Too long we have housed our people in living conditions and environment that is ideal for high concentration of crime and violence, for political mileage and power and exploits. Too long we have people in high places profiting from criminality, sitting there untouched, preying and using our vulnerable youths to further their profit-making agenda. Too long the gap that exists between those who have too much and those who have too little continues to widen. Too long we have discriminated, stereotyped, isolated, treated with prejudice of all types because of the color of one's skin and their social strata, where they're from, who they are. Too long we have prostituted our youths and vulnerable girls to men for their livelihood, not realizing that when some of these young women have children they can't afford to care for, the possibility and probability that these children will go into a life of crime and violence exist. Too long politicians and governments have been using our people like pawns and guinea pigs for personal empowerment and enrichment. Too long powerful people and politicians have turned a blind eye to criminal activities because the perpetrators are beneficial to them in their respective exploits and personal interests and benefits. Too long we have corrupt and criminals at high places in the police force manipulating the system and profiting from crimes. Too long the only justice that exists in this country is that speaks to your affordability and your status, who you are, where you're from, who at the back end they're protecting. So to protect the person of who is really of key interest, they will allow the actual person who went and did the crime to walk free. Too long, as a nation we have ignored the little displaced boys and girls in our community, beating them down and making negative predictions on their lives without reaching out to see what we can do to rescue them before they're totally led astray and turn to a life of crime. And I could go on and on about the many issues that have been going on far too long that give rise to crime and violence in this country. I really could go on. I really, really could go on about many, many of these things that have gone on for far, 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 far too long. And you know what? We know what the end result would have been. However, our solutions have always been when these youths become criminals. Sometimes because the formal society and our systems fail to respond in a positive way to find ways for them to become active participant in that setting. And then when they turn to a life of crime, the strategy has always been throw them behind bars, kill who you can kill by extra judicial killings. And who you can't get in, that means you go lock them up and throw them behind bars. That cannot be our focus going forward. We won't have enough space in our prison system if this is our focus going forward to solve crime. I will tell you that we're going to lose more than half of our nation's youths if this is our main focus going forward. We cannot continue to be reactive in our crime fighting strategies, because whether you want to accept it or not, even your reactive measures not working because the criminals have outsmart you. Because you know why they outsmart you? They have become more desperate, and their survival basically relies on what they do daily to survive. And you know what they say about desperation. All right. As I mentioned before, I've been talking a lot about crime and poverty, but I will tell you that there's another epidemic that plagued this country called bad mind, and it's also a big trigger factor. Some of us are born with that chronic disease where we just hate other people and want them dead and want to hurt them. A man will want to rape a woman just because he didn't try to look her and can't get her. A man will want to, go burn down somebody's house because the neighbor maybe wear better clothes and live a certain lifestyle and try to educate their children. And they drive a nice car and they try to not drink and smoke out and rum out their money, but channel their sometimes meager finances in a very productive way with a long-term vision and goal in mind. They focus on educating their children other than going to the clubs. They focus on cooking other than living at KFC. They focus on buying clothes to wear, not to go show off for the brand. And they live their life in a very responsible way because they really have an end result in mind. And when they make their sacrifice and live, and achieve their goals, you have some bad mind people looking and ready to go snuck out their life because they don't know their journey. You don't know these people's story. You see their success. You have no idea what they went through to acquire and accomplish what they have. But you see them with their stuff and you think they shouldn't have it. And even if you had it, you wouldn't know what to do with it because you don't have that appreciation for certain things. But you just don't want somebody else to have it. And I tell you, this bad mind disease that exists in this country. Only in Jamaica, I think, people who are rich and have more than they need grudge another person for personality and what you stand for, and will do everything to destroy that person, though that person doesn't have half the material wealth that they have. Only Jamaica is a people grudge people because you don't socialize in a certain way, and you live your life in by a particular code, and by certain morals and values. You're branded and hated, and you hear people, oh, you go on like you're nice and you're this and you forget that, and trust me, if you ever get caught off guard among some of those people, they will definitely lick out your head back, just because you make a personal choice to live your life in a particular way. Only in Jamaica you're hated if you don't want to join people who steal and do wrong to other people, but you want to live as much as humanly possible a life of honesty and decency and integrity. And if you try to do the right thing, you're marked for death, believe it or not. If you try to stand up for what is right in the sight of God and man, you're marked for death. Amazing, I tell you. I was talking to a colleague some time ago about the same topic, and he said to me, Andrea, God gave us the freedom of choice to choose good or evil, but I think Satan just made evil more attractive and easy, and as such we'll always be plagued with the myriad of social problems that we have. And when you think about it, the system is really, really set to frustrate those of us who want to do good and do the right thing. The system is set to easily facilitate evil and bad and wickedness. And I will tell you, the system is set for those of us who want to invest in evil and wickedness and just corruption, to do so and get away with it. Those amongst us who want to do the right things are always made to feel that we are the problem. We get the hatred and the hostility, while the criminals get lauded and get the protection and get the support and get the recognition and respect. And until we have moved away from a society that rewards corruption and evil and crime to one that rewards those of us who do the right thing and push the positive agenda, we will always have crime rising out of escalation. That is a reality. We need to start putting systems in place to reward people for doing the right thing. And just by doing that, it will encourage more people to come over on the straight and narrow road where those of us exist who are doing the right thing just because it is the right thing to do. This crime situation, this global thirst for blood and killing, and it has really gotten out of proportion. We can't save the world, but we can try and see what we can do collectively to save our country and our people, and especially our youths and our children. And I want us to stop politicizing crime. Crime doesn't have a color. It is neither orange, and it is definitely not green. We need to start seeing crime for what it is and for how it works, and that it's not prejudice in who it affects. You just need to be at the wrong place at the wrong time, and you could be another crime statistic. That is the reality. That is our reality, and that is the approach and the mindset that we need to take towards fighting crime and towards preventing crime. While we're thinking about the preventative measures, of course, we cannot ignore the sudden call for putting measures in place and strategies in place in this instance immediately to deal with the outbreak and the carnage that really has been placed on our society by cold-hearted people who have no respect for human life. And the military supporting the JCF is a good call by the minister, but we need to get back to the forensic. I know there's some DNA policy that is somewhere in the pipeline. Hope that will roll out soon. Jamaica is such a relatively condensed country, relatively small. Almost everybody knows each other. Why is it so hard for us to catch criminals? Young persons just leaving schools and going out to get a job in some workplace, and they're asking you to go get fingerprinted and go process a police record, just getting your first job out of school. But of course, I guess you can't blame these workplace anymore, because as I tell you that some of our criminals, they're as young as 10 upwards. Why is it though that in almost everything you're going out there to do now, you're being asked to be fingerprinted annually, because it expires at the end every 12 months? I'm assuming that when these guys are taken in by JCF or JDF for processing, they're being fingerprinted, but then they go out, and if you don't have enough evidence to hold them for a particular crime, naturally you have to release them, and then they go back after being processed and they continue to commit crime. I'm not sure why is it then, if these are the same criminals that is rotating our systems, why is it so hard that when we catch them on their next offense, why is it so hard to get them behind bars and to get them out of the system and into another system, to get them rehabilitated out of a life of crime? That is one concern I have. We need to get those CT cameras in these crime-prone areas as soon as possible. And we need to have the reserves and JDF set up short to medium term base in some of these crime prone hotspots. They know where these hotspots are. Everybody in these communities know who the gang members are in every single community. But then the justice system doesn't have a strong teeth to really ensure that these criminals are punished for their crimes, and you see they keep walking in and out of the courthouse because files are not processed, witnesses cannot be found, cases are courthouse piled up with cases, and there are many different challenges that you'll see that result in these guys going in and out of being processed, being picked up and released. So persons who would want to speak out and support the police, or even to support a case by becoming a key witness, are not coming forward because they're putting their lives at risk and the system cannot protect them. The system just does not have the effectiveness of protecting persons who become state witness. And of course everybody's aware that we have this very still strong inform of a dead culture, so that keeps persons who would want to assist in these communities, they really keep these persons quiet and mum, because they have to be concerned about their children and their lives, because nobody is really there, and an effective system is not in place to protect them. And then you have the corruption in the same JCF, where you give information to people we expect to protect you, and then those are the and this is not just something that you feel proud to say. It's just a reality. That is our reality, where the reality is a lot of the criminals are in the police force. Sad but true. It's not that they don't know what to do. And I doubt it that they don't know where to go find these criminals. I just honestly think that the JCF really need to start weeding out some of the criminals that are in the system, in their system first, before they really can be more effective in going for the criminals on the outside. That has also put a dent in the crime fighting strategies. It doesn't matter how good they are. If you have people on the inside manipulating those strategies and making them counterproductive, then you're going to get the result and the frustration that you end up with. So we definitely need to see the continuation of the JDF working along with the JCF and set up short to medium term base in all these hotspots. We definitely need the CT cameras up. We need to get a more collaborative effort between all the different agencies that people have to, and some of it I know, to really tighten up the crime fighting strategies will kind of infringe on some basic human rights. But then we have to make a call. Do we continue to feel like we're living in a war zone somewhere in the Middle East, or do we have to give up a little of something to get something? That is just the reality of life, For you to be something, you have to do something, and for you to get somewhere, you have to go through some things. That's ABC. So we have to make the call as a people. Are we willing to give up a little here to get more over there? That's something that we have to think about. Bearing in mind that at any time, all we need to be is at the wrong place at the wrong time, and any of us at one point or another can become a victim. And I hear all of these brilliant people, and some of them, they think that it can't reach them, So they come and they have all these fancy and politically correct things to say, and ignoring the grave reality that is staring us in our face. And maybe, they might be have to put to referendum some of these, laws or legislation that will have to come to the books to kind of strengthen the crime fighting strategy. But I think if you put it to the public for them to choose, many of us will agree to give up a little there just to ensure that we can have peace of mind and to be better guarantee that the possibility of us living out our 70, has increased. But whatever needs to be done, it really, really needs to be done now. We need better forensics in place to help process some of these cases. Most of these planning of criminal activities take place right over the phone. All the strategizing takes place over the phone. That's something that we need to look into also. Yes, it might infringe on some of our rights and privacy, but if you have certain suspects that you think are perpetrators of crime, when you bring them into processing, do you seize their phone and what laws are there that doesn't speak to, that would support you not having a case of invasion of privacy or whatever, that can assist you to be able to process their phone records and to get into the kind of conversations that there and the planning of criminal activities that are taking place on the phone, through the telephone. We need to go to forensic evidence. I cannot say that enough. And we also need to empower our people to know that when somebody comes to you with certain information, maybe we need to take that outside of the general police force, Mr. Minister, and have a unit that is set up. Maybe you have to get persons from overseas to come in and you set up a unit specifically for that, for persons who have information to give to the police to come in and speak specifically to these people. These people would not be contaminated because they don't know anybody here, and then you can, change out the staffing as often as possible so nobody knows anybody's name. You give them pseudonyms. Nobody can have direct access to these people, but they're there to facilitate people who have information to feel comfortable to come in and talk to these people. That is something that you could look at, because a lot of people will not want to speak to the police. I will tell you that, because they think they're signing their death sentence when they do that. And sometimes things happen right before their eyes. They have the information, but they're not going to give it to the police because they don't trust the police. And I always say the onus is on the police to let the people trust you. It's not for the people to trust and respect you just because you're a police. You have to earn your trust and respect, and then the people will work with you. So I think a special unit of importing persons from overseas to come and gather information from people who have information on criminal activities could be something that we will look into to assist your crime fighting strategies. This monster called crime, I don't know. We just have to continue thinking of all the different things that can be done, assisting in our unique ways from where we are, in our little corner, in our little space, in our communities, and also get more active in the preventative measures, the interventive measures, because when we do that, when we focus more on preventing crime, before finding the cure. As I mentioned before, I'm a strong believer in prevention, and I think prevention is the only cure. It's the ultimate cure. And let's rolling out the different projects, the different policies that will assist these people. I know that we cannot become a welfare state. We don't have the affordability. We're not producing enough. But at least let us try and give as many of our people an opportunity to help themselves and give them a start, so they can, get access to gainful employment and to create wealth for themselves and their families. We need to look back on how we collectively fail our youths and our people, our respective governments and agencies have failed our people, and we need to go back to the drawing board, identify where we went wrong, what we have done wrong, what we are still doing wrong, and see how best we can right those wrongs. We've come to the end of another show. The conversation was not, the happiest, but out of sadness sometimes can come joy. Out of problems we can try to carve out some solutions. So we have to talk about the negatives sometimes, because that's the only way we can strategize around finding workable solutions. So I really hope that you had enjoyed today's show, and that you'll keep yourself and your family safe, and that you will continue to pray for our nation and our people and our decision makers, that they will do the right thing and that they'll make the right decisions on our behalf. And also pray that some of these criminals will turn from a life of crime and see that, yes, they're, for whatever reason they commit their criminal activities, that there is another way. There is always another way, and let us work together in finding the best way out of all the ways that exist. Happy to be here with you. Have a wonderful weekend, and God's willing, see you next week, Saturday. Bye-bye.